Welcome to session 3 of Rest and Renew. And in today's session, we will be exploring the different ways that our bodies and our minds rest, because it's not always about sleep or restorative yoga. And while those things are super necessary and wonderful and we need them, sometimes it's not the kind of rest that we might be wanting in the moment. So we'll be exploring that, and we will definitely be needing some blocks today. If you don't have blocks, I recommend grabbing a kitchen chair or a stool, or even just having a wall right in front of you would be helpful for a shape that we'll be exploring later on in class. So with that being said, we will be starting on our backs, and if starting on your back or lying on your back just does not feel welcome, doesn't feel like something you want to do with your body, that's totally okay. You can start in a child's pose, and we'll be exploring some spinal movement to kind of warm up for our class. And instead of what we'll be doing, if you decide to start in child's pose, you could just simply move into a cat-cow and it'll have the same effect, right? So if you are ready to begin with your practice, also having a blanket nearby. I'm not going to use mine to start, but you will probably need it later on in class, and it's nice to have it. So if you'd like to join me on your back, you might meet me there. And we can just start by feeling around in our lower back, noticing where your hips, your tailbone meet the floor. Perhaps your lower back is feeling a little tense. And if so, you might pull your knees in toward your chest, maybe wrapping your hands around them or even behind your knees. And option to rock a little bit from side to side, just releasing your lower back a little bit. And then when you're ready, you could plant your feet back down on the floor, or you could stretch your legs out long. It's up to you. And we'll just take a little pause here. Taking a moment to arrive in this space. If your mind feels like it's been go, 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 it might be helpful to keep your eyes open and take a moment to let your body and your mind catch up to one another by simply noticing where you are. Noticing the shape that your body is making, where you are in space, what you're touching, and then at any point that you decide to close your eyes, you have the option to do so. I invite you to take a few breaths here, just checking in with your body, your breath. And I'd like to read to you a quote from an amazing book that I highly recommend everybody reads. It's called Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. It's a wonderful book. But speaking of rest, the author writes, "Rest is, quite simply, when you stop using a part of you that's used up, worn out, damaged, or inflamed, so that it has a chance to renew itself." Rest is, quite simply, when you stop using a part of you that's used up, worn out, damaged, or inflamed, so that it has a chance to renew itself. That means rest comes in all different shapes and sizes. So for this class, I invite you to participate in an active form of rest, which is movement, breath work, connecting with yourself, with your body, but also using this time to acknowledge that there are different ways to rest, and what you need in this season of your life might be different than what you needed in a different season of your life. So that could look like connection with others, quality time with others. It could look like quality time with yourself, perhaps withdrawing and having more time alone. It could look like reading a book or writing a book. It could look like physical movement, or maybe creating something if you like to create art or anything else. Whatever allows you to use a different part of you, to connect with a different part of you that isn't tired, isn't fatigued. And maybe that's simply just sleeping, and that is a great way to renew ourselves. So using this class as a time of active rest, but also exploring what other kinds of rest do you need in this season? And then what are some ways that you can give that to yourself? If you are ready to begin moving, I invite you to plant your feet on the floor, about hip distance apart, give or take. And then if you'd like to join me, you could do one of two things. You could start to press your heels into your mat and peel your tailbone up off of the floor, continuing up your spine. And then as you exhale, you could peel the spine in the opposite direction, allowing your tailbone to come down last. A second option is to simply move your spine in one movement, kind of like an elevator. So you're just pressing into your heels, lifting your hips up only as far as you want to go, and then settling them back down. If you are in a child's pose, maybe you shifted into a tabletop, you might start to explore some cat-cows at your own pace. And so whatever you decide to do here, even if you're still in stillness, even if that's what you've chosen that your body needs right now, that's a great place to be. You never have to move your body if you're not ready to. This is your time. This is space for you to feel what you need to feel, be with whatever needs being with. So whatever you want to do, I celebrate your choices. And as we continue moving and breathing, you might start to bring some awareness into your body a little bit deeper, feeling where the effects of this shape are taking place. You might feel a little bit more warmth occurring in some areas of your body, or maybe a different sensation. If you are on your back and you'd like to switch up the movement a little bit, option to do one leg at a time. So that could look like settling your hips back down, lifting one leg. Maybe you keep, I'll start with my right leg. So maybe you keep your right knee bent. Maybe you kind of lift your heel up towards the sky, your choice. And then pressing your left heel into the floor, you could lift up and settle back down. Maybe taking a few on one side before switching to the other. And this is optional. This isn't something that you have to do if you don't want to. But if your body is curious, you might explore a few more on this side. Last one. Option to release the leg that's lifted, and maybe switch it out for the opposite one. Pressing up and lowering down at your own pace. Maybe you take 2 more, or you can take as many as you like. I'm going to take my last one here. And if you feel complete, you could release both legs down. Option to stretch your legs out. Maybe a few ankle rolls. And then rolling onto our stomachs, or settling onto your stomach if you are in a tabletop. And you could take your left forearm and allow your forehead to rest on your forearm. This is option 1. As we draw our right heel toward us and swim our right hand back and grab a hold wherever you can, drawing your right heel toward your right glute. And if there just is a lot of space back there, that's okay. You could always use a strap or a towel to loop around your right ankle and hold onto the towel. Another option of having your head resting on your forearm is just not comfortable or where you want to be. You could always come up onto your left elbow and hold onto your right leg, just as you would in the other option. So it's up to you. So wherever you decide to be, I invite you to be here for about 3 more rounds of breath. If you're feeling any pinching or searing pain in your knee, that's a message from your body to ease off just a little bit. It's always your choice. But just noticing, like, how does your body feel here? What are you feeling? Our bodies are always sending us messages, but are we listening? With your next exhale, you might decide to release your right leg. Take a second in the middle before we rush on, noticing any difference between your right leg and your left leg. And then if you're ready to switch to the other side, option 2, draw your left foot, left heel back toward you, reaching back with your left hand or your strap or towel, adjusting this shape to suit your needs. It doesn't have to look like what I'm doing. It can look like whatever your body needs it to be. 3 more breaths here, or as many as you want. Last one at your own pace. If you're ready to release, option to do so. Checking back in with your legs, maybe shifting them from side to side, feeling any changes that might be present. And then placing your hands on the mat. If you're ready to press back, you could start to press yourself away from the floor And option here, we'll be moving into a child's pose. So if you don't already have a blanket underneath your knees and you'd like to have one, you could go ahead and grab that now. Maybe your knees are a little bit wider than hip distance apart. They could even be as wide as your mat if you really appreciate a bit more space. And you could walk your hands forward. Maybe your forehead rests on the floor. Or if that's just not an option for your body today, you could always keep your gaze lifted, drawing your elbows back and kind of propping yourself up a little bit. This is our child's pose, and there's lots of different ways we can be in it. And there's no right or wrong way. And you can take this shape, or any other shape for that matter, at any point in the class. No permission needed, aside from your own. Your permission is the only one you ever need to do anything with your body. No one else's, and certainly not my permission. If you're ready to continue moving, you might start to inhale. And as you start to lift your head up, option to round your spine forward. And as you exhale, I'm going to shift my knees back a little bit, making some room so that I lower down onto my stomach. This is like a variation of a vinyasa. It's much more gentle, I find. So from here, with your hands somewhere underneath your shoulders, you could inhale, press your hands into the floor as we lift our heart up for cobra pose. Only come up as much as you want to. And then as you exhale, you might start to shift back. And I'll meet you back in a child's pose, but this time you might notice that to keep the range that we just established here, your hips might not go all the way back to the heels. So let's take a few more rounds of that. If you'd like to join me, you could inhale, curl your spine up towards the sky as you shift forward. Exhale, lowering down to the floor. Inhale for cobra. Exhale to shift back into a version of child's pose. One more round. Inhaling, curling forward. Exhale, lowering down. Inhale for cobra. Exhale, shifting back. Option to stay here in child's pose, or option to shift forward as we tuck our toes and find a downward facing dog. So you could shift forward onto your knees, so coming into a tabletop, and then tucking your toes. I like to keep my knees bent for the first part, for the first one, because your hamstrings might feel a little tight. So with our fingers spread nice and wide, you could start to lift your hips up towards the ceiling. Maybe your knees stay bent, and maybe you kind of shift your hips back so that your shoulders receive a nice stretch, and you could release one heel down to the floor and then switch it out for the other. Or you could keep your knees bent the whole time. Or if your hamstrings feel ready, you could always release both heels down to the mat at the same time. If you feel like your body would appreciate a little bit more space, you could take your feet as wide as your mat. So widening your stance, noticing how that might feel. Taking just a few more breaths here to kind of give our bodies a moment to open. And with your next inhale, Option to come up onto your tiptoes. If you are in child's pose, option to shift forward into a tabletop. And so on your tiptoes, if you're in down dog, you could lift your right leg up back behind you. You don't have to, this is optional. So from tabletop or down dog, option to lift your right leg. And then as you exhale, you might start to bend your right knee and plant it on the outside of your right hand as your left leg settles down towards the earth. This is a great place to use some blocks. Noticing that you have multiple different levels. So highest height is here, medium height, lowest height. Adjust it to your needs. And let's take a moment to kind of settle into this low lunge. So adjusting as needed. If you find that your stance is a little bit too narrow, it might be helpful to take your right foot out towards the edge of your mat. So over to the right. Noticing if that provides a bit more space. And then option here to lengthen through your right leg. Maybe you walk your blocks back with you. Maybe your right foot and toes kind of peels up off of the mat. Option to lunge back, forward. So maybe you stay in one of these shapes. If you are really enjoying the low lunge and you want to stay here, great. You can hang out here for as long as you want. Or if maybe this half splits is really nourishing you, you could stay here. Or you could choose to kind of oscillate back and forth between the two. So whatever you decide, let's take another 3 breaths. Just taking this opportunity to explore whatever is present for you. One more breath in and out. The next time you find yourself in a low lunge, option to stay there. And we'll be moving into a variation of pyramid. So tucking your back toes, lifting up on your back knee, and I'm going to shorten my stance. So I moved my right foot back and I'm going to move my blocks up to the highest height. You might also do that. You might not. Just depends on what your body needs. And then on your back foot, so staying up on your left toes, this is the modified part, or the variation rather. So you could drop your left heel to the floor, or you could stay up on your left toes. And our front leg is straight or straight-ish. You could always add a micro bend, especially if you know that your knees tend to hyperextend. And so with our hands on the blocks here, this is a great place to stay. Maybe you stay right here in this halfway lift, or option to take a breath in, and then exhale, and fold over your front leg. It's another really big hamstring opener. We'll stay here for just another 2 or so rounds of breath, not too long. Where do you feel the sensation in your body? Can you pinpoint it with your mind's eye with our last breath? If you're ready to leave this shape, you could start to lengthen through your spine. And then we can always use our blocks to keep some space on our way down. So you could bend into your front knee, lower your back knee back down to the earth as we step our right foot back. Blocks can head on over to the side for a moment as we settle back into our child's pose. One round of breath here. In and out. You could always choose to stay here, or if you'd like to join me for our little vinyasa variation, you could inhale, curl your spine up towards the sky as you shift forward. Exhale, lower on down toward your stomach. Inhale for cobra. Exhale to shift back. Option 1, child's pose. Option 2, downward facing dog. 3 breaths, or as many as you'd like. Last one. All right, if you'd like to shift forward into tabletop, if you're in child's pose, option to do so. If you are in down dog and you'd like to lift up your left leg, maybe you come up onto your tiptoes and then lift your left leg up as we exhale. Shift our left legs forward. Blocks here are helpful. And remembering that your left foot can head all the way over to the left, especially if you need a little bit more space. Adjust as needed. You don't have to confine your body to what you think maybe it should be doing. What feels nourishing here? What can we adjust about this shape so that your body can receive what it needs to receive in this moment? You can always make adjustments. All right. You could stay here in low lunge, or you could shift back, lengthening through your left leg, peeling your left toes off of the floor. You could stay here, or you could oscillate. Whatever you decide. 3 breaths. Setting your own pace. There's no rush. There's no right or wrong. You can literally do whatever you want. The next time you find yourself in a low lunge, you might stay there if you're ready to set up for pyramid. So, bringing your blocks up to their highest height if you think you might like that on this side. You could tuck your back toes, lift up on your back knee, and then I'm gonna slide my left foot back, so I'm shortening my stance considerably. And then lengthening through your front leg. You might stay up on your right toes, or you could allow your right heel to drop towards the floor, but just notice the difference there. Notice how it feels. It's a completely different feeling, as you will soon experience if you do that. Option 1, this halfway lift right here. Option 2, breathing in and exhaling. Folding over your front leg. That is straight or straight-ish, give or take. Two or 3 breaths here. Last one. If you feel complete, you might start to unfold, bending into your front knee. releasing your back knee to the floor. Or if it feels like it's more spacious to just step your left foot back, you could do that too. And then bring your knees to the mat. And then shifting back. Maybe you stay here in child's pose if that's what's going to nourish you. Or maybe you inhale, round your spine up towards the sky as your knees slide back a little bit. You could exhale over down onto your stomach. Inhale for cobra. How different does this cobra feel compared to your first one? And then exhale, shifting back. 3 breaths here in child's pose, or 3 breaths in downward facing dog. Last breath. Inhaling and exhaling. And if you're ready to continue moving, you might shift yourself into a tabletop or a down dog, you choose. If you'd like to lift one leg, your right leg, option to come up onto your tiptoes. If you're in down dog, inhale, reach your right leg up. And then as you exhale, bringing your right knee in toward you, planting it on the floor, but this time, a little bit of a shorter stance. I went way too far, so I'm gonna send my right foot back. And then your left foot can kind of come in at an angle. We're setting up for warrior 1 here. All right, so that your left toes are kind of angled out toward the left. It's kind of bladed a little bit. And then inhale, option to reach up nice and strong, bending into your right leg, lengthening through your back leg. Option to reach your arms up towards the sky, or you can have them anywhere else you want them to be. They could be at hands at heart center, hands on the hips. You could even explore rolling your shoulders back, maybe clasping your hands behind you. Lots of choices here. None of them are wrong or better than the others. 3 breaths. And again, if you're feeling like balance is a problem in this moment, like, whoa, this is kind of funky, you could take your right foot, move it out to the right side edge of your mat. Widen your stance, create more space. Notice, what does that do for you? How does that feel in your body? 2 more breaths. All right. You could stay here, or if you'd like to join me for warrior 3, then go ahead and have your blocks nearby, or the chair or stool, or the wall. Okay. So there's a couple different options we're going to explore. You could start with your hands on your blocks, and so here's option 1. You could start to lift your left leg, shifting your weight onto your right. Maybe your right leg still has some bend in it. That's totally fine. It doesn't have to be completely straight. And so maybe your hands stay on the blocks here. Maybe you bring your fingertips to the block. Okay, if this feels like just not where your body wants to be, another option is the same thing, but lower your left toes to the floor. Notice how that makes a difference. If you are using the wall, you could simply bring your hands to it right in front of you, holding onto the wall. You would use a stool or a chair the same way you would blocks. Okay, if you're feeling like your body is curious, you might extend your right hand out in front of you or swim your right hand back. You choose. If you're still feeling curious, you might follow it with your left hand. All right, lots of work happening here. Let's do one more big breath. And then releasing your hands back down to your blocks or whatever you have in front of you. Left foot settles back in. And go ahead and step your right foot back. Settle your knees down onto the mat whenever you're ready to. Downward facing dog or child's pose. That was a lot of work. So can you take a moment to celebrate the strength in your body? Even if you were shaking and wobbling, so was I. Even if you fell out of it, that's okay. Perfection is not a requirement, nor does it exist. All right. If you'd like to join me in tabletop or down dog, option 2, lift your left foot up and exhale, step it forward, but maybe take a shorter stance. Adjust your right foot when you're ready so that your heel is planted on the floor. It helps so that your toes veer off to the right. Have your blocks or whatever you have close by. And then when you're ready, big breath in to lift, settle into your warrior one, taking whatever variation with your arms that you want. Lunging into your left leg. Your right heel is plugged into the mat. And if it's not plugged into the mat, maybe it's floating a little bit off of the mat. That's okay too. Maybe that's just as much space as your right calf or hamstring has today. That's totally fine. All right, let's take another 1 or 2 breaths. Last one. All right, you could stay here, warrior 1, or if you'd like to join me for warrior 3, you could start shifting yourself forward. You have lots of options here. Option to float your right leg up, strengthening through your left, or keep the right toes on the floor. And option to extend your left hand, or maybe swim it back behind you, or both hands. Embrace the shakes and the wobbles. They're not bad. They are signs that your body is working hard. Your body is strong. Your body is capable. So is your mind, and so is your heart. One more breath. All right. Right foot, settles back in, meets the floor. And hands to your blocks. Maybe you step your left foot back and settle in. That was so much work. My muscles are trembling right now. Child's pose or down dog, you choose. We're going to start cooling down. Kicking it down a notch. So let's take 3 breaths here. One more. And you could stay here for as long as you want. There is no time limit. But when you decide, if you decide you're ready to move on, you could begin to lift your head, shift yourself forward, and we'll be moving into a pigeon pose. But at the wall. So you can go ahead and sit on back and we'll readjust a few things. And taking our mats and blankets to the wall. You don't need a ton of space, but just, enough to be comfortable. So, taking your mat, turning it around, taking your blanket if that helps you. All right. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna plant our feet on the wall so that our knees are at like a 90-degree angle. And so that means that your glutes, your hips, are not gonna be right up against the wall. There's gonna be quite a bit of space. All right. And a good way to know if you're around a 90-degree angle is if your hips are thereabouts underneath your knees. So then we'll extend our legs up the wall. And then I'm gonna start on my right side. You can start on whichever side you want, but I'm gonna take my right foot, I'm gonna cross it over my left leg underneath my knee. So I'm not actually placing any pressure on my knee. And then you could start to take your left foot, bring it back to the wall, planting it, and then mindfully start to lower your left foot down the wall until you hit your stopping point. If you feel like you hit the furthest you can go on the wall and your body is asking for more, you could gently take your right hand to your right knee and mindfully press your right knee away from your body and notice how that might change the sensation that you're experiencing. But remember that you control this stretch. You control how much you are experiencing this sensation in your body. If this is too much and it's more than what your body wants to experience right now, you could move your left foot up the wall just a little bit at a time until you feel like it's at a bearable place. Like it's a place where it's still opening and stretching, but nourishing rather than overwhelming. We'll be here for another 10 to 12 rounds of breath. So we'll be here for a little while, really settling in. There are so many different ways we can rest. So if you'd like to, you could take this opportunity to ask yourself, what do I feel like doing in this season for me? Not for anybody else, not our ways that I could give to others, but just like, how can I give to myself? How can I receive rest? Even if that looks different than what it normally looks like for me. Does that mean that you paint or make jewelry or start to write? Maybe you create. Maybe you carve out time to have mindful movement or journal. Maybe it is taking a hot bath and going to bed early. It can be anything you want it to be. all of these things are ways that we rest, and more. There are so many ways that, that was a non-exhaustive list. We'll take our last few rounds of breath here. Although if you don't feel complete yet and you want to stay here longer, you totally can. If you're ready to move out of this, you could start to lengthen your left leg, sliding your foot back up the wall, uncrossing your right leg, and stretching both legs out, maybe moving through your toes or your ankles. And then when you're ready for the next side, you could cross your left foot over your right thigh or quad, and then start to slowly bend into your right knee. Slowly lowering it down the wall until you hit that spot that works best for you. Perhaps you mindfully press your left hand into your left knee. As we settle in for about 10 to 12 breaths. Last few breaths. If you are ready to, you can start to lengthen your right leg back up the wall, uncross your left leg. Give your legs a little stretch, a little movement. And then I invite you to stay right here with your legs up the wall for the remainder of Shavasana, our time of rest. However, if you want to scooch a little bit closer to the wall, you can, but I do encourage you to have a little bit of an angle so that your legs can really relax and not have to hold themselves up so much. We'll be here for about 4 or 5 minutes, and I'll keep track of the time. And I'll let you know when this time of rest is complete. And even though I'm quiet, I'm still right here with you. And just know that if this having your legs up the wall is not restful for you and you don't want to do it, you don't have to. You can move away from the wall and rest in any shape that calls to you. And when you're ready to sink in, to settle in, I invite you to take a conscious breath in through your nose and out of your mouth. Shavasana. You can stay in this place until you decide you're ready to move out of it. There's no rush. You can rest as long as you like. And when you do decide that you're ready to start to move out of it, if your legs are up the wall, you might just simply bend your knees, bringing them in toward the chest a little bit, but maybe kind of keeping your feet planted on the wall a little bit, just to provide some extra support. Resting here for a minute. And then in your own timing, you could roll over to one side, resting in a side-lying shape. And then pressing yourself up whenever you're ready. And making your way into a seated shape. Rest is, quite simply, when you stop using a part of you that's used up, worn out, damaged, or inflamed, so that it has a chance to renew itself. What part of you is not worn out? That is the part of you that you might explore resting with. Option to leave your hands where they are, or maybe join me at heart center. Option to join me for a collective breath, starting with an exhale, letting all of your air go. And we'll breathe in together. Thank you for practicing with me today. My hope for you is that you feel safe, connected, and at home in your body.